Okay, the winner that it seemed like most of us were expecting, but the road to get there, not exactly what we were expecting, yeah. That pretty much sums it up in a nutshell in this episode, but let's dive into it. So, everyone gets back from Tribal, and then it becomes obvious that Suri actually was going to take out Sarah, she was going to take out Tai, which I suppose does kind of make sense because he was the real addition to the alliance, and Sarah going after Michaela is explained as an effort to weaken Suri in the belief that she was going after her, which not a bad idea by any stretch of the imagination, but does leave things in an unstable position. But that's kind of what we all wanted to see happen in a way, right? So that immunity challenge, I don't know what it was about that challenge, but everyone running around in that maze, it just seemed kind of, I don't know, just, kind of just went on and on. It was just weird. I was like, is anyone actually getting somewhere? And Jeff going, Ty constantly following Brad. Oh, Ty is one of Brad's heels. Just, okay, Jeff, I get it, but I think this is one instance where you really went a little overkill. Come on, Jeff, right. But that puzzle, yeah, that's a very complicated puzzle. I could definitely get why it took people a while to figure it out, and then a Brad being able to solve it. I don't know. I didn't have too much of a reaction, to be honest, although I was kind of a little bit more for him getting it because he didn't really have any advantages going into this. So I was like, yeah, let's perhaps have this be a little more interesting. And I did see two people predicting that he'd probably be able to win another immunity, and I had been thinking, given how there's three of them, if he ends up being at all three of them, it wouldn't be that insane for him to win another. I'd put money on that, so yeah, he won one. And then we also have the scene where Ty all of a sudden decides to tell Brad that he has two idols. Now, in his exit interviews, he says, well, I just had to do something, and I was a little nervous, and then it all just came out, and then we have the train wreck effect. Well, really, it's just Ty causing, issues like Ty does, making it appear in the usual sense. Now, in the people.org video bits, the ones that Andrea hosts and Dr. Ross usually appeals on, Brian from Guatemala mentioned that Ty, in a way, behaves like Dreams, where he's constantly annoying and causing issues for other people, but it's a little bit different because Ty actually does want to form good relations with everybody, but in the game, he causes like a whole bunch to happen and is just, in many ways, not every way, but in many ways, be like a stumbling mess. And yeah, because like I probably wouldn't do too well out of that, given how I'm not really the best at, assessing everyone's emotional qualities. Oh, I know what you're thinking. Well, if you're not that great at assessing emotional qualities, why are you making these videos? We're looking at a condensed version of the real thing. Right. So yeah, that was just Ty going off El Wacko, but then Brad, in his demanding that Ty do a certain thing, that really, kind of got to me. It's once again somebody who had a good amount of stakes, in the game, suddenly reeling a bad head and then making themselves look a lot more negative in our minds because we're seeing that happen a good amount where somebody who, not necessarily the person in control, but someone who had a great amount of personal control ends up, suddenly doing a few actions that make them, less frowned upon. I mean, like Cochran did that, Tony did that, Coach did that to a lesser extent. Actually, maybe that's Tony who did it to a lesser extent. And there's definitely other people, I just can't really think of them right now, so yeah. That definitely got to me a little bit, and I had like no clue what was going on because I'm like, okay, so is Ty in trouble? Wait, is it Aubrey? What's Sarah's plan? What's going on? And why is no one talking about Suri? Yeah. Because that's one thing that's amazing. Suri was barely ever talked about to be voted out other than Zeke. You know, back when he was contemplating turning on Andrea and her, but realized he had to stick with them if they wanted to destabilize Brad's group. Even though, ironically, in many ways, he was responsible for the very unstabling of the group he joined, right? Even though he did say that it was a fragile group, right? So at Tribal, things were beginning to get more interesting, and then Ty decides, okay, it's time for me to do my bit now, so he plays one for himself, which fulfills the obligation he did to Brad and makes sense, but then he pulls out another one and he gives it to Aubrey. Well, as it turns out, he didn't have the greatest amount of logic behind it. It was just, you know, get a little bit of focus on him and potentially destabilize everyone's games above him, with the exception of Sarah somewhat. So there was logic in there, but it doesn't translate that well given his history and of course the fact that he did the domino effect of Sarah going, hey, not a second, I voted for Ty and he's safe, and Aubrey, the backup target, is also safe. Ooh, I'm in a little bit of trouble here. Okay. Fish it out. And then Troy's end, he's able to figure out, hang on a sec, everyone except for me and Suri is safe. Darn right, I'm saving myself as well. Yeah, the joke is just like, ah! Oh, God, that was hilarious, right? And then suddenly everyone realizes a couple seconds too late, except for like Suri, that, oh, wait a minute, I'm the only one left that can be voted out. Oh. Yeah, that's pretty ironic. She ends up getting eliminated. She wasn't voted out. And she never had her name written down the entire season or on the tribal that she was voted out. Yeah, she is officially the first real elimination of somebody to, you know, go for the entire game and then leave without their name getting written down. Because Rupert, he swapped with his wife, and Pascal, he was wrongfully included in the Purple Rock tie-breaking bit, so I don't really count that. So, yeah, finally happened. Someone lost with no votes cast against them. Interesting. So how do I feel for Suri? I did feel a little bit bad for her because the rug, you know, was pulled under her feet, but at the same time, I had read, you know, various possible what-if scenarios with hitting the immunity idols long before Cambodia happened, and we had everyone except one person safe at the final six, albeit in different circumstances, so... And I had also seen a few comments of people predicting that this Dairy Demo could happen, that everything would get played at the final six, so I wasn't, oh my god, surprised. It was just, ooh, this actually happened, nice. But as Steven and Sophie pointed out in the Know-It-Alls video, they were a little annoyed about the legacy advantage, and I ultimately have given it some thought, and I realized that this advantage really isn't that useful, given how it basically is a hidden immunity idol, but it can only be used at, you know, 1 or 2 tribals, and it can only be used for the player who's currently holding it at said tribal. It can't transfer it or anything. It just seems kind of worthless if you ask me. Yeah. One would argue it would be better for everyone to like will the hidden immunity idols that they have, which would mean a lot more people would search for the idols, but then it means that control doesn't really have the potential to switch, you know, throughout the game. So I'm not really a huge fan of the legacy advantage now, but it is not because of anything that happened on this season. It is just simply how it's applied and how much, you know, it just flows. And do I feel like they did too many things this season? I honestly do think there were, yeah, because doing both the double vote and the steal a vote, that was overkill. One of those, however, especially the double vote, I was fine with, but had they only done the steal vote, I would have been okay with that, honestly. One of those is not extreme in the slightest, but having both of them, especially in addition to the legacy advantage, yeah, so I'm honestly kind of hoping that they retire that. If they don't, well, I don't think it'll matter too much, but... Right. So then we lose Suri, which means I don't have to really deal with my conflicts about her, but I do like Suri. This season was nice. It gave her a positive light again. Everybody enjoyed her on here. Sure, we didn't get that great of an edit from her, but I could apply that same issue to tons of other people that were going on this season because somebody pointed out this season has just been like a roller coaster, and I totally agree with that, but a much more complicated and confusing roller coaster than, like, say, HVV, because HVV, you know how we were all complaining back when it aired that, oh my god, what the heck just happened? Pfft, that season in comparison to, like, now in terms of craziness was a cakewalk. And it's not just because we've had time to delve into it. I can remember everything that happened. I could probably, without even looking at a list, tell you how every person voted on every tribal. Yeah, okay, so as you want individual immunity and rewards to boot. Okay, so everyone gets back to camp, but we don't see anything. Then we get another challenge, which is the ball challenge from San Juan del Sur that Keith got a training advantage for. I was like, okay, how are they going to do this when they don't have, the ability to train with this? Although they could have done it and just not shown us. But as it turned out, Brad simply managed to develop a knack for the challenge, and the moment Sarah or Aubrey dropped their ball after getting a good ways along, while Culpepper was a good ways along with his second, I go, okay, Culpepper's won this one. That's obvious. So, then at camp, it becomes obvious that it's either Troyzan going or it's somebody from Koran going. And the whole time I was just thinking, it's kind of odd that no one is talking about Sarah, but that suddenly Aubrey is more of a threat to go with Ty, because if they're thinking about jury bits, sure, Aubrey hasn't ruffled anyone, but she's done squats. Like, really, why would you be worried about her, you know? It was just the way that they were talking about her, but it just didn't make any sense at all. Because we barely heard anything from her this whole season, and now suddenly when the Sophie people left, you end up hearing from, like, everyone. Troyzan got some real confessionals this season. It was just, in a way, kind of laughable at just how dumb it sounded, ultimately, because I'm like, the people that we are discussing to be voted out here pretty much have no shot to win. Aubrey has none. Troyzan has none. Ty, he doesn't really have that much, even though, as it turns out, he would have gotten a good amount of jury votes under the right circumstances. Yeah. So then going into Tribal, I had started to think that Troyzan was like 60% likely to go, and that Aubrey was 40% ready to go, but I'm like, it could go either way. It all depends really on what Sarah does, and they end up voting out Aubrey. Well, I was actually kind of glad about that, because, they got rid of one of the people that, we hadn't really wanted to see win this whole game, and get rid of one of the two remaining mana members, but that also meant the game was down to just Brad and Sarah, so I was like, okay, one of the people that I predicted would win this thing will win. Now the question becomes which one of them. And then we had that last challenge, which was kind of interesting. But the thing was, in Jeff's opening explanation to the challenge, I don't recall him ever stating that you will use your combination box. So the whole challenge, I was just like, but what's the combination box for? What do they need to use it for? Why didn't you explain that? Oh, gosh. That was so silly. And I find it real impressive how the lead changed, during the challenge, because Sarah had a lead originally, but then she struggled with the keys, which can happen, because I know what you're thinking, is just put a key in the hole. Well, there are just times where it's simply not easy to put a key in a hole. I mean, like, you have to try to fit a screwdriver into a nail, and, try and do that? It's not as easy as it seems sometimes, okay? Right. But then Brad was able to make a comeback, but then Ty actually managed to do fairly well at the puzzle because other than Brad, he was the only one that was able to get it, even though really, if you get lucky with two of those pieces, suddenly it becomes a cakewalk after that. Right. But I was a little bit more for a Brad winning it over Sarah because it would allow me to see a little bit more from this guy and figure a little bit more what he was thinking, even though, truth be told, if you really wanted to know my perfect scenario, I kind of wanted Ty to win, so the other three would have like a total freak out. I was like, that would be fairly interesting, but a more obvious person, Brad wins, which means he ties the record of most individual immunities won in the season by a man, which is more than women because, as I've said before, the women are 4 immunities in all 3 categories. The men are 5, both consecutive and non-consecutive, and obviously Boston Rob holds the record for returnees, right? So yeah, good on to him, another member of the club. Right. And then when he gets back, he launches into this weird statement about, okay, I'm going to give it a tie because he's done wrong by me. And the moment I saw that, I'm like, okay, that's it, Brad, you've sealed your fate. Sarah's going to win this. Which really wasn't an ultimate shock because I've been thinking ever since I saw Sierra be voted out that it would probably be Sarah winning this, even though I didn't take Brad off top picks. Well, I didn't take anyone off top picks because top picks are top picks. It's just suddenly I go, okay, here's who I think will win. But anyways. And the more I'm just looking at it, I'm like, yeah, Ty, you're not going to be able to save yourself here. You've gotten yourself into a little bit of a train wreck here. For real, even though it was actually Brad who did more onto you, because what you did in comparison to what he did ultimately was minor, but it really ended up being one too many for Brad in the game, and yeah, that ends up getting rid of him. And then we've got that final tribal, and nice, we get a final tribal, that actually had some real interesting points being made. There were like tons of great comments made about Brad and Sarah, just pros and cons, what they did right. Oh, Brad, you have no clue what Michaela really is as a person. That's what screwed Brian almost in Thailand from what I've heard. I don't know. Who cares about Thailand? And then Sarah was being criticized for forming good relations and then cutting them even though other people have done that. And like, why the heck was Andrea, illustrating that she was unsure about that? Andrea, come on. Cochran and Dawn did the exact same thing that Sarah did to you and Caramel, but for Cochran, you just went, okay, I don't care about you, but Dawn, ooh. And like, why did you do that to Brenda? Well, she didn't say that, but that's pretty much what the entire jury was thinking in Caramel. And then Rob in Redemption Island didn't do something too dissimilar, but you didn't have any complaints to him. Just, why are you complaining to Sarah? Just, Andrea, sheesh. What was the deal with that? There was nothing unusual about that. And then Ozzy trying to equate Brad to him. Well, Brad actually had a lot more strategic control than you did, at least in Cook Islands. In South Pacific, it was kind of similar, but the Witonies were fitted as the tribe's leaders pretty much by default. So that lessens the effect of it, okay? I still haven't seen Micronesia, so I can't comment on him there, but he was with Suri the entire time, so yeah, I think she played him into a little bit of that. I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen the season, right? But that was actually interesting. And then when Troyzan actually started the talking, there was quite a few comments of, no, Troy, be quiet. It's not your turn, and you're not going to win this game anyway. And he pretty much admitted that at the end. Not exactly, but he says it's been an honor to play with all of you guys. You only say that if you're trying to really appease somebody or if you're consigning defeat, which is pretty much what he was doing. But yeah, like, that was the most obvious 0 vote getter in a Final 3 that we've ever had. I mean, for crying out loud, like Natalie in Redemption Island, talked more. Chelsea talked More Dawn talked more, albeit Sherry was the real zero vote getter in that season. Jervis talked more, yeah, just come on. You could not have made that more obvious, and like the moment Michaela did her bit, if there was anyone out there that didn't have any doubts about Brad, winning, that should have just gotten rid of you like that. I mean, like, sure, Haley and Andrea admitted that they're like, hey, there is a possibility that we will write your name down, and Ty said, yes, I was close to you at one point, Brad, but after what you did to me, I was looking at the jury, and I'm like, people, Sarah has 7 votes on that jury guaranteed. Brad only has 2, who are the people that openly admitted it. The only person who isn't really obvious on this jury is Sierra. Because I was thinking that she was actually going to vote for Sarah, and I was a little bit surprised when she ended up writing Brad's name down, even though if you had approached me before this finale, I would have said that she would have voted for Brad in that situation, yeah. But like, it just seemed fairly obvious to me that Sarah was going to win. Like even before the final tribal, just yeah, like the road to get to the final tribal was a lot more interesting than the final tribal. Even though this was a much better discussion than what we've had before, it's just an example of saying that I like this new forum for jury decisions. Yeah. And like Sophie, she actually made a point that had this been done in a South Pacific, the final tribal would have felt differently, and I think that there's a good potential for that to happen, yeah. But yeah, Sarah won, and that really wasn't too much of a surprise. I mean, like, going into it, there was like a 95% chance that she would win, where Brad had the other 5. Now, he could have won, okay, because had he theoretically said the right things, he could have gotten Ty's vote, and he might have gotten Haley's vote, although I don't really understand her logic when it was the 3 guys at the end and her voting for Brad. I really don't understand that, but yeah, he did have a shot, but it was an extremely low shot. This wasn't like Coach and Sophie, where it was actually pretty close. Okay? Right. So, how do I feel about Sarah winning? I'm actually happy for her, but I really, really wish that she had gotten a better edit. Like, you know how I complained about the winner of Big Brother 17 being the worst represented winner in the history of the show? Well, this is pretty close to that same feeling, even though it's a lot easier to assign the strengths to Sarah, because many will argue that it's actually Michelle who definitely deserves the worst represented winner, because even when she won, I myself said, bad edit, but it's a little bit different. Like, if you put the gun to my head, I honestly cannot tell you who's worstly represented, in my opinion, because Sarah, we did know that she was a little bit of a threat, but it's unfortunate that when she emerged, her credibility was kind of tainted, because Andrea emerged and she got that credibility. Cochran emerged. He got that credibility. Pav emerged. She got the credibility, albeit a little late, some argue, but who cares? She got it anyway. And Cirie emerged. Can't forget about her, right? But yeah, it's just a bit of a bummer, in my opinion, that she's going to be a little, misrepresented with all this bit. And many will argue that actually, technically, Brad did a much bigger improvement than her. Because, like, yeah, who would have thought that arrogant Culpepper, who can't say a thing right in his first season, who made himself look like the biggest jerk that we had seen in a long time, even though many people argue Colton and Cochran, I don't know about that, but could just, turn his game so much around and actually do just as well as his wife overall, because I could have sworn I saw something that said that they have played the exact same number of days. That's interesting, isn't it? Right. So, yeah. Good on those two. And he mentions that neither of them are going to play again, and honestly, I think that's a good thing, because I have never really liked Monica as a game player that much, and Brad, yeah, there's no way he'd do any good next time. He'd, slide down again and just be someone to work well at the challenges and then cut. Right. So, I think that wraps up just about everything, I think. Oh, yeah, what about Troy's end? Well, I am glad that he actually got to the end because, Ty and Aubrey, they had already been to the end, and Suri, I hadn't really wanted her to win this, given her lack of an edit, so I am glad that he made it. I know there's a bit of, many will argue that's a slap in the face to Suri, but Suri was never really in danger of losing her reputation. In my mind, if anything, the season strengthened it, so let's have somebody else get a little bit strengthened, but this is the last we're going to see of Troyzan, I think, which isn't really a bad thing because he got everything he wanted from this season except the chance to win, which is kind of like Spencer. So I really hope that those two, decide to close the books on their Survivor careers, not because I dislike them, but because this is just the right time to do it. Like Andrea, she's definitely closing her book after this. I cannot see them talking her into a fourth time. Right. So, I'm not going to bother with the rankings for this season or if everyone improved or didn't improve. I'm going to save that for my next video. So, I'll see you then.